Yesterday, I was calculating in my head and I was thinking that I lost almost few couple of thousand euros since I came to Germany just because of not knowing the system. And today I want to tell you about the mistakes that I did so you don't do the same. It's very important because when we come to Germany, when we move to another country in general, we think that the first thing that we have to figure out is finding the job and then everything eventually will be solved. But the thing is, but not knowing the system, you will lose thousands of euros in between. For expats, the situation is very different because it's like you were born into a new country. So you need to learn the language. Everything is basically different. The language, the culture, the system, the finances, everything is very different from the country that you initially came from in. So I remember the first year that I came here, I signed a 2-year contract with a provider, internet provider, that I had to pay 60 euro per month for a period of 2 years. The internet had a lot of bugs, so every day I had to reset it. I tried to cancel it a million times, but it wasn't possible because I was in a contract for 2 years. So the next thing is when I moved to another apartment, I didn't know that I have to pay also for the gas and it's not included into the Nebenkosten. So I had to pay 90 euro per month extra out of my budget just because of that. And there are a lot of different examples that I can tell you about that I lost a lot of money on just because of not knowing the system. And it's not something weird, but it's something that happens to everyone. Basically, every expat that I know has lost some money somewhere just because of not knowing the system. So financial planning, or in general, financial well-being, shouldn't be something that you sacrifice your life for it. You shouldn't go on a very hard diet or very hard budgeting. But it starts from the moment that you start knowing the system and minimizing the costs. So, as an example, right now I'm in a contract of internet which I pay 35 euro per month. I have the same internet quality, even better, and I can cancel it every month. So, this is an example of how you can maximize your return in life in general. So, how you should start? When we talk about the finances, we talk about many different subjects that we can look into. But the first thing first, that is a lot of people talking about in social media, is 50-30-20% system. It doesn't work for everyone. Actually, it doesn't work for many people, specifically expats. So if you have heard about this budgeting system, I want to tell you that you shouldn't get so hard on yourself. So why? Basically, at this rule, it says that you have to pay 50% of your income into what's needed. We can say the fixed costs, such as the cost of groceries, the cost of the rent, the cost of the utility here, 30% into what you want, which is not within your needs, and the 20% on the saving. This system doesn't work for most of the expats that I know, at least, because when you came to a new country, you have a lot of hidden costs as an expat. So your needs usually exceed 50%. And this is not only for expats. Nowadays, with the economy system and everything, it's also the same for a lot of locals. So keeping your needs under 50% or by the maximum 50%, it's something that not realistic in many lives. So that's the reason you need to go on a goal-based budgeting. As an expat, you have a lot of costs that other people doesn't. For example, you have to furnish your apartment, you have a lot of costs in terms of changing the visa or exceeding the visa, you have a lot of costs in terms of the translation, the document. So a lot of costs are in between that another person at your age might not have, but you should pay for that. And it's not something that you get rid of it, it's like non-negotiable. Also, based on your goal, there are different things. For example, someone would like to buy an apartment in 5 years. Another person is in 30,000 euro debt and they want to pay that off as soon as possible. there is another person who's a student, just want to start from the scratch. So the budgeting should be a goal-based budgeting rather than a fixed rule. So here I want to ask you to sit with yourself and see what are your goals. What would you like to have in short term, like in 1 year? What would you like to have in longer period, like in 5, 6 years? And what are you aiming for in the long run? We can say in 30, 40 years. It is very important to look into each detail, because when you know that what would you like to have, maybe a lot of people don't know if they're going to stay in Germany or not. Then you have to plan something based on if you move countries. This goal of moving around countries shouldn't actually stop you from planning for your future, because then by the time that you know, okay, I would stay in, let's say, Scotland, I would go to Spain and stay there forever, it might be too late to start something for your future. So you can use time as your biggest power here to actually not seeing the clear goal in the long run, but walking through the right road at least. After knowing what is your goal in the short, mid, and long term, you need to create a budgeting system for yourself. How much you would like to contribute to each part. So you start doing that with a clear goal and a clear system in your mind. The second step, which is very important and a lot of people are avoiding, is having an emergency fund. It's even more important as an expat because a lot of you came here alone or with a family that you have to support. So here, if something happens to you, if you want to change the job, if you get laid off, if there is an unexpected cost coming, you have to be able to pay for that. And by emergency fund, we mean at least 3 months of your expenses. Not 3 months of your income, but 3 months of your expenses. And this amount is not for traveling or so, this amount for actual emergencies, such as something happens that you want to go to your homeland tomorrow. You should be able to pay for the travel cost without asking someone else to give you the money. So it's very important to have at least 3 months of emergencies in your account, but it's very important to keep it in the right account, because the emergency fund is for emergencies. So you shouldn't put it in the Girokonto when we talk about Germany, but you should put it in the Tagesgeldkonto, so you get some interest in it. Because every year, because of the inflation, our money loses the value, we can say by 2-3% every year. So let's say if you have 1,000 euro into your Girokonto account, then after 1 year, the value would be by 2% inflation, 980 euro. You actually have 1,000 euro into your account, but your purchasing power decreases. And that's exactly the reason you shouldn't put your emergency fund into the Girokonto, but into the Tagesgeldkonto. For an emergency fund, it's very important that your money stays liquid. So don't invest it in the market, because it might be the case that when you need the money, your portfolio will be in the minus, and then you will lose a lot of money if you take it out within the next day. So you need to have your emergency fund somewhere liquid that grows slowly, or at least keeps you from the inflation. The next thing that you have to do after setting your goal, and after setting your goal-based budgeting, and after figuring out how to save for your emergency fund, is the foundation. So basically, these are the things that you have to do in parallel. It's not something that first I have to check the budgeting, then I have to check the emergency fund. After that, I have 3 months of emergency fund, I will check, let's say, the foundation. It's not how it works. So you should start them in parallel. So what is the foundation? The foundation is actually the system that you create that if something unexpectedly happens, keeps you away from going into the debts or having serious financial problems. What is the most important foundation system in Germany? So if I want to tell you something very general, which works for a lot of expats, is first of all, health insurance. This is mandatory in Germany, so this is not something negotiable that you can choose to have it or not having it. But even within the providers in the public system, there are different providers that you have the option to choose one of them. So the cost is different due to the part they call it Zusatzbeitrag, and you can use a provider who offers a good coverage and at the same time lower contribution. So you can stay in the public health insurance, but minimize your cost at the same time. Also, in some cases, you could have the option to switch to the private one, but this is something very tricky, and this is something that you need to look for it individually. So the next one after the health insurance is having the liability insurance. In Germany, due to the law, you're liable for everything that happens to the third person because of you. So because of that, liability insurance is one of the cheapest insurances in Germany, but one of the most important ones. You need to have this one because a lot of things, believe me, can happen unexpectedly that you cause a harm to a third person, that you need to pay for it with everything that you have and everything that you will have in the future. So there's no limit, basically. The third important insurance is the legal protection. I will explain everything about the insurances in another video, but just for you to know that if something happens into the legal system, if someone sues you, if you want to sue someone because something happened to you through them, you can use this and it's very beneficial for expats. It has different conditions and different sectors that you can include, which we will go through it in the next videos. But it's important for the foundation to have a good health insurance that you pay optimized cost for it. Also, the liability is the most important ones after health insurance. And then the legal protection is something that's very good to have for a lot of expats. So the next stage is the investment. Investment is very important. And it's not about how much you invest, but it's about when you start investing. When we talk about the investment, we have different options, different time horizon. It could be for a midterm, such as 5 to 7 years of investment. It could be also for the long run, such as investing for your retirement, to retire early, or to be able to retire with the same life standard as you have right now or you would like to have. So it's very important when we talk about the investment, we know what's the goal. And for the long run, for the retirement, it's not about how much you start with, but it's more importantly about when you start. So the sooner you start, because of the compound effect, you have a lot of benefit of using compound effect in your favor. So imagine that you start investing with 50 euro per month at the age of 20. It's much more valuable and it creates a lot of interest than starting at the age of 30 with the same amount, because you have less time and the compound effects works the best on the last years in the chart. So when you lose the last year, when you start late, you basically lose the last columns in the chart and you lost the most returns. So that's the reason. With the investment, first you need to create the habit. So even if you're 20, if you're 19, if you are 25, you should start investing with an amount that you're comfortable with and dedicate it to your investments every month. And then you should increase the amount based on your goal. So for example, if your goal is to retire at 45 or retire at 55, or retire at 67, the standard retirement age, but with your standard goal that you would like to retire with, let's say 3,000 euro per month, you clearly know how much time you have, then you should actually increase your investment amount until the point that you reach your goal. So first thing first, you need to know that you need to start by the amount that you are comfortable with right now, to create the habit and then gradually increase your investments. So basically, to sum it up, the most important thing, first of all, is knowing your goal. Based on your goal, you should create a goal-based budgeting system for yourself to know how much you should dedicate for your needs, how much for your wants, how much for your savings. After that, you need to start creating your emergency fund. This is something you should do in parallel. So basically, after clearly knowing your budgeting system, you start dedicating something for your emergency fund, not in a giro konto, but preferably in a tagesgeld konto. So the money doesn't lose the value over the time. Then after having the emergency fund, after setting the goal for the emergency fund, you should also set your foundation in terms of the insurances, the most important ones. So you shouldn't overpay for the insurances, but you should pay for the one which is the most useful and you think that you will need them in the future. Then the next one is the investment. So when you set the foundation, when you set how you should save for your emergency fund, you should also dedicate an amount for your investment. So at this stage, you have a clear goal, a clear financial plan, and then you can make it better throughout the time. So financial planning is not about starting perfectly and with a big investment amount, but it's about knowing your goal, start doing the small steps for it, and then increase it gradually to eventually reach your goal. I hope you liked the video. If you like this, please subscribe to the channel so you see the future videos as well.